අර මං හිතන්නේ එතුමා ඉමෝෂනලි එක්ස්ප්‍රෙස් කරන්නේ එතුමාට තියෙන ප්‍රශ්නයකට වඩා සමස්තයක් හැටියට SME එකේ තියෙන ප්‍රශ්නේ. මම හිතන්නේ අපි ඒක ඇප්‍රීෂিয়েට් කරනවා හැබැයි මං හිතන්නේ අපි යම් තීරණ වලට අද ආව තව විනාඩි 5ක විතර කාලයක් තමයි තියෙන්නේ.
ඇත්තම මට පොඩි වෙලාවක් දෙන්න මම SME එකේ අවුරුදු 30 ගණනක් ඉන්න කාන්තාවක් හැම
ඔබතුමගේ නම
මම ජානකී අමරසිංහ අවුරුදු 30 ගණනක අමාත්‍යාංශ සමගදත් මේ චේම්බර්ස් ඔක්කොමත් එක්කම වැඩ කරා මේ හැම දෙයකම මුල වුණේ අපේ SME අයගේ කිසිම වරද්දක් නැති මේ රටේ ඇති වෙච්ච දේවල් නිසායි මොකද මාස 1 2 3 යනවා දැනෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඒ අතරදී අපේ වරදකින් නෙමෙයි අපිට නිෂ්පාදනය කරගන්න බෑ, වෙළඳාම කරගන්න බෑ, ණය ගෙවන්න බෑ. ඒ සේරටම මුහුණ දුන්නේ රටේ තිබ්බ ආපදා නිසාම තමයි. නමුත් ඒවා වෙනුවෙන් අපි වෙනුවෙන් කවුද ඒ ගැන හිතුවේ? බැංකුව බලනවා මාසෙ 2 3 ගිය ගමන් ක්‍රිබ් එකට යනවා. හරිම අසාධාරණයි. අපි දන්නේ මෙතෙක් කල නමුත් අපිත් මේ වෙනකොට අමාත්‍යාංශක වැඩ කරලා මේ තත්ත්වයට ආවේ ව්‍යාපාරයක් නිසා. ලස්සන්ට ගනුදෙනු කරගෙන ගියා. බැංකුවට මම දොස් කියන්නේ නැහැ. නමුත් බැංකුව හැමතිස්සෙම අපිව ප්‍රතික්ෂේප කරත් අපේ තියෙන ධෛර්යය මත අපි හොඳ විදියට අපේ බැංකු කරන්ට් accounts ඔක්කොම පවත්වාගෙන ගියා. මේ දෙයට වග කිය යුත්තේ අපේ මේ වෙළඳ ව්‍යාපාරිකයෝ SME කට්ටිය නම් නෙමෙයි. රටේ තියෙන දේවල් නිසාම තමයි මේ ප්‍රපාතයට අපි වැටුනේ. ඒ නිසා රජයත් අපේ සෙන්ට්‍රල් බැංක් එකට එකතු වෙලා අපි ගැන සාමදාන විදියට පොඩ්ඩක් හරි බලන්න තිබ්බා. පුදුමාකාර විදියට මිනිස්සු මැරුණා වහ බිව්වා. තියෙන දුක් හඳෝනා එමට ඒවා මට මෙතන කියන්න හොඳ නෑ වෙලාවක් නෑ. ඒ නිසා මම නම් කියන්නේ අපේ හොඳ ආර්ථිකයක් ගේන්න මේ අපි පෙන්ෂන් එක ගෙවන්න රජයේ දේව කරන අපේ බදු වලින් අපි කිව්වේ. අපි කවදාවත් ඒ වලට පසුබට වෙරුන්නේ සමහර අය නොගව ඉන්නත් ඇති. නමුත් අපේ මේ ඉන්න කාණ්ඩය හරි හොඳට වැඩ කරගෙන අපි මේ රටේ තියෙන සියලුම දේවල් නිසා තමයි අපි මේ තත්ත්වයට අද වැටිලා ඉන්නේ. ඒ නිසා අපි ගැන මේට වැඩිය හොඳට හිතලා දෙපැත්තම එකට සම්බන්ධ වෙලා අපේ රටේ SME එක ගොඩ ගන්න ඕන නම් අපි ඔබතුමාලා එකට එකතු වෙලා අපි ගැන බලන්නම ඕනේ. ඒක තමයි මම හිතන්නේ අපිට ඕන එකම දේ. සුති
Mrs. Janaki Amarasinghe, thank you. අපේ වෙලාව මදි නිසා මම ඉතාමත්ම very quickly I want to invite the Bankers Association and the Leasing Association and the Finance House Association just very briefly express any sort of issues that you may wish to express here. Leasing Association, Mr. Chandika Hettiarach. Yes.
The leasing industry has contributed towards the development of the MSMEs and the SMEs. So if you look at how we have been financing as an industry, even a person who did not have the financial records or bank statements, the the financial sector has been financing throughout. Even a person who is having a small micro enterprise at home, who does not have a registered business, who does not have a bank statement, the financial institutions, the leasing companies, the NBFIs have gone and financed, and basically they have grown with the organization and graduated to become bankable clients. So we have a lot of clients who have graduated through all our financial institutions and gone to become bankable clients. So we have been continuously financing them. If you look at the in terms of financing in the NBFI sector, it's mainly the auto financing right now if you look at the total disbursements. So there is a higher contribution towards the auto financing sector. But even on that auto financing, the NBFIs have been doing a lot of working capital financing as well. So let's say if you look at the leasing done over the last year, we have about 500,000 contracts given on leases during the last financial year. This includes three-wheelers, motorcycles as well. But if you look at the four-wheelers, we have done 220,000 contracts. Out of the 220,000 contracts, about 35 to 40% is for working capital because they refinance their own vehicles to finance their existing business operation. So even during the crisis, we saw a lot of existing clients refinancing their vehicles to support their business, to get working capital for their business. So they have not gone to banks but come to financial institutions. But what I see is if the government can intervene and give guarantee schemes. Now we have already got few guarantee schemes where we have 80% guarantee for women and entrepreneurs and 50% for the others, 70% for the others. So that those kind of schemes will help us to even finance equipment. Now the NBFIs have that appetite to go and finance the micro enterprises. That's where everybody starts. So we have the appetite to do that. But the issue we have is, even when low-cost funding lines are given, it's mainly given through banks. So, and it goes to their own clientele, the clients who basically service well. But it doesn't go to the grassroots or the micro enterprises. So if the government can consider the NBFI sector to basically allocate at least some percentage of these low-cost funding and even maybe targeting the equipment financing with some kind of guarantee, I think that will pick up.
Thank you. Sri Lanka Banks Association, would somebody...
Honorable Chairman, can I add just one bit to what his gentleman said?
Yes, please.
Like he correctly said, the vehicles are considered as an asset, an appreciating asset in that SME segment. So people, since they cannot afford lands, they buy vehicles on leasing or likewise and make it like a movable asset in that class. So one issue though is now, for example, because the risk, of course, I understand, like for motorbikes, presently, I will name many lease companies, the interest rates are at around 27 to 28%. So if you're leasing your motorbike to support your business, so that is a very unsustainable interest rate for anybody to take a working capital loan on. But people use it like that. Because lack of guarantee. Of course, and the risk the leasing company is taking because of the defaultment rates, I understand. But if there's some guarantee from, let's say, the government, maybe they can reduce it to support that.
I remember, Honorable Member, I think it was during this Parliament or last Parliament, I can't recall, we amended the law to make movable assets, collateralizing movable assets.
That is very recently.
Recently, we did that, I remember.
It is the Secure Transactions Act.
It is Secure Transaction Act.
That was passed, and then I think CRIB was the one who was supposed to give the technical and operational support for that. So that is basically operationalized. It was operationalized on November. So we have requested certain resources from the Finance Ministry also in this regard, where I think it was discussed with regard to invoice financing, factoring.
Yeah.
All these things will come under the Secure Transaction Authority Act.
Yeah, that's good. So that differential must come down. I mean, with the Secure Transactions Act, then your collateral has that much more legal clout, and therefore the risk falls. Thus the premium can fall. Thus the 28% can fall by a substantial number of basis points. But leave it at that, because he says only November it started. So hopefully soon you will see some positive action there. We have very little time. The Banks Association and the Finance Houses Association.
Chairman, my name is Arjuna Gunratna, Chairman of Finance House Association. I think Chairman Leasing Association also pointed out. I still extend it because none of these refinance schemes actually, NBFIs have been actually included. Most of our transactions are kind of actually below 2 million ticket size. And they are the real MSMEs, and actually when they are actually in distress, actually they need real support. And most of these schemes for SMEs or MSME schemes, we have had not any access to this finances. We are compelled to operate with our deposit funds as well as the bank borrowings, which are very much high in cost. At least to make a request, even the recent 90 billion, the first scheme, the NBFIs could be, because that's where the real MSME are, because
Yeah, I think you're making this an opportunity to
no, we have
to get some cheap funding, which I don't disagree with you at all. The last opportunity I want to give to the Sri Lanka Banks Association, if anyone else, Mr. Jeevant spoke earlier, if there's any more, anything else you want to add? Or anybody else from the Mr. Asanka Dinesh Lianage, Mohan Fernando, and Mr.
Honorable
Jima.
Chairman, I'm Mohan Fernando representing Commercial Bank. Actually, myself and my colleague Asanka from Sampath Bank,
Yes.
we are representing the SLBA. So
Yeah.
I think there were a lot of good points and issues that we discussed during the meeting today. In going forward, I think one good proposal came up. That is, first of all, let me acknowledge the good work and the contribution and everything is done by the SMEs to the national economy, and also the good work done by the federations. Because there is a successful model already which is in place. That is, the federations, they bring the SMEs which are faced with difficulties to their respective banks individually. These one-to-one discussions are very much successful, I would say. Even the hats off to the ministry, because during the last year, there were 50 cases referred to commercial bank by the ministry, and also 33 from the federation, and whereas 30 cases were already settled. So I think that model is very much important in going forward. So rather than just taking as a whole, so individually taking care of the affected SMEs is what is important in going forward. Thank you.
Right, that brings to a conclusion. I said 4:15.
One request.
Yes.
Since all these things, there's a disconnect between the bank and the policy and all that, no? So from central bank or banking association, is there a way that we could introduce a formal loan rejection letter by the bank?
Why it was rejected?
Why it was rejected? Whether it's rejected due to creditworthiness, whether it was rejected because the bank didn't have enough funds, whether a person was in the crib, because these are ambiguous statements that's coming out of SMEs to me. Because sometimes banks say this loan scheme is not informed to us. Sometimes they tell you are in the crib, therefore I can't give. Some say this loan fund is over, therefore we can't give you. But if the bank can officially issue a customer saying you applied, we looked at your everything, for these reasons you can. Because then it comes to development. Then the ministry's responsibility is to develop the person up to that point and go again. So if you can do that, Chair.
Yeah, I think that's a
that
very,
will
very
be a
reasonable
very
proposition.
clear, transparent process.
Right. So when we meet the central bank, make a note of his secretary and we'll bring it up. Once again, to conclude, I think this was a very good and productive meeting. I thank all the officials of the ministry, the central bank, the crib we wanted to talk about, but got to it somehow, and the Bankers Association, Leasing Association, and particularly the chambers. I know we see on television, we see how hard you fight, desperation, we see in the tone of voice, and it is true. We are facing a crisis, and I know the central bank wants to wash their hands or say we are only trying to protect the stability of the system. We appreciate that. At the same time, there are two sides to this coin. People work really very, very hard, and not for any of their faults. We ran into a crisis. As a government, we were able to restructure our loans. But for them, they haven't necessarily been successful. And one reason why we were able to restructure, and I want to say this openly, is because the government agreed on a very disciplined fiscal path. And we are not breaking that. Immaterial of who is in office, we are sticking to that path. And that is important. She talked about the moral hazard problem. Moral hazard problem is real, right? And you say this, you're taking this money, and then you go and buy a BMW or a Mercedes. And then that whole project falls apart. I mean, I'm not saying you, but I'm saying this is what we see in this country, and that is to a fair extent the truth. So there are several things that we arrived at, several, like 3 or 4 main issues. One is about the bad bank. And I think there is a general consensus that the real solution over a longer period is the creation of an entity, whatever you call it, so that the debt can be removed from the holders of the debt into a different entity, and that entity would somehow create a relationship with the SME with the debtor in possession, and that is critical, that the debtor is in possession, they run or she runs the enterprise. So that's one, and I think let's look at why it hasn't happened, because since 2023, now this is 2026, there should have been some movement along those lines. The second one is, partly of that is simplified insolvency legislation. Can we create some simplified insolvency legislation so that even in a case of a bad bank or even currently in the restructuring process, that would be cost effective and simple. Another one is the real issue is on the interest rates, right? The interest rates were high when the loans were restructured, and according to the chambers, federations, they haven't necessarily come down, which should have happened. And one of the issues here is not just the first restructure, but there have been almost 3 restructures. And that is really where perhaps the issue lies. So we will create a template and we will share the template with the federations, and they will fill those forms, and we will even mediate if at all necessary to get that process moving. The other one was NBFIs to become a part of these concessional loans, which I think is a very, very valid proposition. I recall many, many years ago, Honorable Minister, long before I came to Parliament, with the World Bank, we looked at a project called the Energy Delivery Project. And what that was to put a small solar panel on the roof, and that would light up 2 or 3 lamps, a small fan, and a black and white television those days. What happened was the loans were not moving at all. Midway, there was hardly any movement. And we found out that is because the transaction costs of the bank to do those small loans were very high. So they were not interested. Whereas people like Sarvodaya and Sanasa were more than willing to do it. Guess what happened? At midterm, the structure changed. And that won an award at the bank because it was one of the most successful projects. And then that project had a second episode called the RERED project, which was a rural energy for economic development and so on. So what I'm saying is sometimes these smaller agents, smaller banks are more equipped and, like he said, has the appetite. Now, does the commercial bank have the kind of appetite the leasing company or the financial company has in servicing a 2 million rupee loan? So that's, I think, another point. Then another point was a template to collect, financial consumer protection beyond the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. That's a broader sort of a topic that needs greater discussion. So I think Honorable Minister of Finance, Honorable Minister of Industries, I think, without any, I find this very productive because we represent different political parties. These guys are ministers in government. We are MPs in the opposition. But in situations like this, we need to go beyond and be able to come to solutions that really impact this country. So once again, thank you everyone for coming. We will be in touch, and with the good wishes of these honorable ministers, what we can do as a Committee on Public Finance, somebody said, we will endeavor to participate in this process. Thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.